Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited for this evening's topic on gratitude and really looking at how we can use gratitude as an antidote for burnout and a catalyst for thriving schools with my friend Noelle Thiering, who is here. And she's a wonderful contact that I made on LinkedIn. And I can't really remember why I reached out, but other than I probably saw that you were, interested in some of the same topics that I was. And you have more than 15 years of experience as a literacy coach. You started your own business, which you're going to talk about in a little bit, but I'm just really glad that you're here this evening. I'm excited to talk about this because I think it's really important. I've learned a lot about this topic over the last year, like 5 years. I know you have as well. And so if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and get started, Noelle, and then you can kind of help introduce yourself throughout. But one of the things that I know about you and the reason you're here is that you are extremely dedicated and passionate about helping educators thrive. And so I'm excited to hear more about that. And that kind of leads me to my first question. So, what made you so passionate about focusing on gratitude as part of your educator coaching? So, it's not just a personal interest, it's a professional interest. And what happened? Like, why this topic other than the personal benefits?
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Cindy. I'm just so excited and thrilled to be talking about this. This is obviously a passion. So I just have gratitude for you for holding space for
Well,
these.
thank you. And same here.
Okay. So I'm going to do a little personal and then I'll get into the professional. So my story of gratitude started my first year of teaching, and it was 2008-9 recession. I was looking for a job, right? Just like all my friends. And it's like, it was really hard to find a job. And so I interviewed at a school and they offered me a position and I accepted without really knowing much about the school, as sometimes we do with our first jobs. And I luckily landed in a position with incredible leaders who I didn't notice at the time or realize, but they were leading with gratitude. And so I had a superintendent. It was a very small school district, a superintendent my first year. She was known for making the rounds in the morning and walking me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I would be teaching my heart out, and she would come up to me and whisper in my ear, "I am so glad you're here today, Noelle. Thank you so much for being here." Yeah. It was like
I've never had that.
unheard of. Yeah. So this
Unheard of.
the culture and the nature of the school climate. My principal of that school, it was an open door policy. She was in and out of my classroom all the time. And anytime she came into my classroom, she left a handwritten note of all the positive things, all the good things she saw that I was doing, which really made a difference for me. I still have those handwritten notes.
Isn't that incredible? That's so interesting. Which is it really, as a side note, so that is, Amber, that I've introduced you to, as a
Mhm.
principal, did those types of things. And it's amazing that, I mean, you don't know Amber. It wasn't like you didn't know Amber previously, and it wasn't that principal that you worked for. So wonderful that other people, besides just one, right, are doing these types of things. That is incredible. I
Yeah.
love
Yes. And it really made the difference for me as a teacher in wanting to stay at that school.
that.
Like
Absolutely.
I was like, so why? Of course, why wouldn't I leave? So fast 6 years, I had to move to a different city. And so of course I had to switch schools. And my sister, who's my best friend, she gave birth to twins and she was hospitalized in critical condition.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This gave her 10% chance of survival.
Your sister.
My sister.
Oh
So
my goodness.
she's very healthy today. At the time I was devastated, and I felt like my whole world had shattered and turned upside down. So every day I would go to school and teach, and I would come to the hospital in the evenings to be with her
Wow.
for 3 months. And one day a nurse came by and talked to me about gratitude. And she said, "You should really start practicing gratitude." And she told me to like pause and notice the good that's in my life, like the doctors that are caring for my sister, the moments of, resilience that I have. And I was like, that is impossible. Like, I cannot practice gratitude right now. And then the next day she came back and she handed me this small leaf cutout, this green leaf made out of construction paper. And she said, "I want you to write down something good in your life." And then we taped it to the wall of my sister's hospital room.
Wow.
Made this gratitude tree out of like brown butcher paper. And every day I would come in and write something
My
on the
gosh, bringing tears to my eyes. That's amazing.
it to the wall. And then as visitors came in, they would then take a leaf and add it to the wall. And within weeks, we just had this beautiful display of all the good in our lives. And it really helped me.
And your sister.
Yeah, and my sister.
And was your sister like coherent?
So she was not for most of the time.
Okay.
And so it really was, yeah, just
Really hard. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was really when my personal gratitude took off, when I saw
Okay.
like there's really power in this. And I like to think like I began to see in color again.
Yeah. And I'm certain that initially when the nurse talked to you about this, if it were me, I might be a little annoyed by this, you need to look on the bright side kind of thing when I mean, I'm not trying to say that some people wouldn't be receptive, but it's really hard. Like sometimes at first I would imagine if it were me, I would have some choice words in my mind, and then I'd have to reflect on that and go, okay, you're right. You know what I mean? Like it might be I might have had a defensive reaction to that I would have come to regret
Yes.
initially.
When we think about gratitude, we like assume happiness, right? It's like
Yes.
in the moment, I don't want to feel happy. I need to feel
Right.
sadness. And so
I
just
like that. Don't mistake that for happiness. Not the same. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really powerful. Okay, so now we're at the professional point. So you've left your very appreciative school district,
Yes.
and you're in another school district that may or may not be very appreciative.
Yes.
But
Yeah. And you can fast forward. I moved to New York City. I worked as a literacy coach all across the nation. And I went to Columbia for grad school.
okay,
And that's when I really took off in studying. So I got a degree in clinical psychology and education, where I studied education. Burnout. So of course, gratitude comes up a lot
yeah.
there. And yeah, so then I founded a company, Solara Learning, which is literacy, infusing literacy and well-being in schools.
Oh, wow. And is the infusion of literacy and well-being in schools aimed at students or teachers or both?
Both, yeah. So it's like my bigger mission is to nurture the nurturers so that
Okay.
teachers,
Okay.
students succeed. But yeah, the impact is then students are, yeah,
Okay.
thriving.
Excellent. Wonderful. What an interesting journey you've had. You're now, after traveling around the world, or at least the United States anyway, you are now back in, or you are not back necessarily, but you are in Texas. And so you are a literacy coach there as well. Okay. And so I would imagine Texas has some challenges regarding not your, but educational funding, which impacts schools. The more I'm reading about it, when I graduated, this is the difference in age that we have. When I graduated from college, Texas had like it was, I know this is going to be hard to believe, but it was like a standard in some cases. I think they also had a lot of money funneled at public schools, and I don't believe that is the case anymore.
That is a true statement.
I think they were like spearheading a lot of teacher evaluation mechanisms that I wouldn't say are necessarily have proven to be research based around like merit pay and all of those things. I think now they're just really struggling, not only in funding, but also in retaining teachers. And so I'm glad you're here. And maybe that you could talk to me a little bit about why you think this concept of gratitude plays such an important role in teacher retention, not just in Texas, but everywhere.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. So, okay. I would love to answer this question with a little activity if you'll just like
Yeah.
engage.
Do you want to share your screen?
No, no, no. This
No.
is just
Okay.
for you and others that are listening.
Okay.
So, okay. So we're going to just kind of orient ourselves to the room.
Okay.
And we're going to look to the left slowly, and we're going to look to the right slowly. And just notice as you're looking all of the red objects in your room, and you can just name them in your head. And you can come back to center.
Okay.
Able to name quite a bit of things that were red.
I'm in a very earth tone based room,
Oh, okay, okay,
but I have found a few things.
okay.
So
A few. Okay. Now I want
not
you to.
many.
Yeah, that's what and it depends. So now,
Yeah.
and I want you to think of all of the blue objects in your space.
Oh.
Okay, you can open your eyes. How'd that go? Were you able to think of any blue things?
No, I
Are
don't,
there?
there's only one blue thing and I didn't think of it.
Okay. Okay. So
Oh,
for
besides my shirt, which looks kind of black, but I didn't even think about it.
yeah, so the whole purpose of this activity is like what we put our attention on becomes our reality, right? You
Yeah,
couldn't think of the blue things, even though they're there,
yeah,
unless you're really focusing on them. And
mm,
gratitude is the same way. With teacher retention, if we can focus on the good things, and like we're naturally as humans, we naturally see the negative.
yeah,
So to refocus our attention on the good, and that is exactly what can help with teacher retention. In education right now in our nation, it is, I mean, I just feel like the pain points are so real. There's so much stress,
yeah.
so much overwhelm, a lack of recognition, a lack of feeling connected with the people on your campus. And research shows that gratitude can play a really powerful role in keeping teachers in schools. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the research. I feel like you probably also have come across some interesting research.
Yeah, no, I would love to hear more. I last month's webinar, just Jay talked about how, as human beings, our brain is literally designed to focus on threats and typically the negative side of things that our brain just is that's how we're designed. And so we have to really be intentional and work at shifting it out of that negativity. And I think that can be really challenging, especially if we're not in a happy situation, right? We really have to work at it. So yeah, I don't know if you want to, why don't you talk a little bit more about the research piece of that, and then we'll go on to a few other questions.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much research out there about this, but just to name like just a couple. So in 2021, there was a study that found that teachers who are practicing gratitude regularly are experiencing lower levels of exhaustion and higher levels of job satisfaction, which, as you know, those are two key
Two
indicators.
big things. Yeah, huge, huge thing. Yep.
And then another study in 2017, this was by UC Berkeley, they found that in schools, students who are practicing gratitude actually have higher test scores, they have stronger social connections, and greater resilience. So it's not that gratitude is making our teachers and students happier. We're actually, when we practice gratitude, it's helping students learn better.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I
Like,
love that. Why do you think that is?
well, so yeah, so when we think about student learning, like if I'm feeling safe and connected to my teacher and my peers, I have a way better access to all those parts of my brain that I need.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of like, I mean, I know this is a little more outdated, the model of Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs being met, and at the very basic level are basic needs of food, shelter, support, love, care, but also that I would think that gratitude contributes to that sense of belonging and connection, like you said. So I think that makes a lot of sense. What are some ways that you've done that with students? Like how do you I can imagine teaching multiple different levels. Kindergarten, primary grades would be all over this. Like you wouldn't even have to explain why they would love it because they're just programmed to be pretty happy. Middle school, on the other hand, I can maybe there'd be a few more challenges. So talk to me a little bit about ways that you've put this into practice with both teachers and students, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I should specify my expertise is elementary.
I mine as well.
That's where all of my experience lies. So one really specific example that I can think of is in the pandemic in 2020, September, to set the stage. So I had been living in New York City and I moved back to Texas and took a job as a second grade teacher. When the world was upside down, I was like, I need to be closer to children, like,
Yeah.
source of my joy. And so it was a weird time. I moved across the country during the shutdown. I started teaching, having never stepped foot in the school. Hadn't met my principal, hadn't met my students, like I didn't know any of my colleagues in person. And so during this time, like everyone's feeling disconnected. And so I was looking for ways to boost my student connection as we're on Zoom as 8-year-olds. And so I actually have two of my mentors, Lizzie and Marie. They were in the process of writing a writing unit that was for correspondence or letter writing for second grade. So I was like, can I pilot it? And the whole unit was themed around gratitude. And so we worked up towards the end of the unit was to write a letter of gratitude to your favorite author. So we're building this like beautiful literacy. And so I took it a step further and I reached out. I was like, we're all in this, we're locked in our home. So I'm going to check if it was okay with the families. And I posted the student letters online and tagged the authors.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So my students had a real audience, right? They're
Yeah.
really to their favorite author. And I had one student named Matthew, and he had just moved from the UK, right? Totally
To
different
Texas?
during the pandemic.
Oh
And so,
my,
yeah, he wrote to David Scheid, and not only did the author write back, but the author wanted to send Matthew a signed copy of his book and a little care package.
oh,
And
how cool.
we like made that happen, and Matthew felt seen and more connected. The author felt seen and more connected. I felt seen as a teacher. It was just this beautiful moment of bringing literacy and gratitude, just weaving them together naturally. Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a side topic here. Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. But I was thinking a lot about, there's a lot of focus on literacy instruction right now. And it's really interesting when you get to be my age where you can kind of see things come and go and then come back. And, it's like, it's just crazy, right? We just, the pendulum swings of one thing back, back and forth. But one thing that I keep sort of thinking about, it talks about gratitude. You talked about their favorite author. And I think sometimes what we're missing in getting kids to even want to read, motivating them, is that we're missing like the love of reading. We are so focused on the base, like dissecting every aspect of it and the phonemics. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. But I think what we've forgotten is that from a very basic place, kids have to like it because it's hard work.
Yes.
And I'm just so like, I'm not, this isn't rocket science, yet we've made it so, I'm not saying that there aren't there's a lot of technique to it, but I think we've missed just sort of we've focused so much on the technique and the technical side and not just the love and enjoyment, like finding what people are passionate about and really utilizing that and getting them excited is a huge motivator. So sorry for the side topic, but talk about like what you just did in that lesson of gratitude in tying what students like about literacy, not only to the topic of gratitude, but also just enjoyment of reading is huge and often missing.
Right. And you can guarantee I'm going to get a lot more writing out of them, right? A lot more.
Right. There's a whole purpose, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to write and then to get okay, how many of the students actually heard back?
Ooh, I don't have that stat. I mean, it was
Make a guess.
I would probably say at least 50%.
That's pretty incredible.
Which, you're tagging someone on a social media that is incredibly famous, for them to get it even.
That's pretty amazing. Well, what a wonderful tie to students and learning. And why do you think, we talked about some of the basics, but is there anything else you'd like to add as to why you think that gratitude resonates so strongly in school communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the last point of that is like our teachers and students deserve to flourish. And so gratitude is one avenue that can help ease burnout and strengthen communities and to create a culture of thriving schools. So why wouldn't we want to incorporate this?
Well, and it makes you think about the things that are good about your own school community. I mean, one of the things that I feel is missing when we're recruiting teachers to our school community, whatever it is we often don't tell them what's good about the community and why anyone would want to go there, right? I mean, like, so sometimes when you're focusing on gratitude, like every school community, and we're thinking about like the majority of communities in the state I live in are very rural, small communities. I mean, most are that way. Most states are that way, right? We have all these tiny little rural schools. Well, people aren't, typically really motivated to move to a small community for lots of reasons. Number one, just the job market in general for, other people can be challenging, but school districts do a fairly horrible job about telling people why their community is unique and special and why people would want to come there. And I think if we focused on the gratitude part, not just with the school and what makes the school special, why we appreciate the school, but also just the community in general. People want to be a part of that. So that alone, even if there wasn't something extremely special, like, oh, we have a national park 5 minutes down the road, like that might not be the case. We might have nothing for miles and miles, but what we can offer you is a place where people are going to appreciate you and appreciate one another. And I think people would want to be a part of that. Talk about a fabulous recruitment opportunity, right?
What's good? Let me join that community, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like thinking even about who you want to work for. Like if you could, you'd probably love to work with that same group that you worked with previously in wherever you're at, right?
I would love to be working with Dr. Grayson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So, right. But you probably can't get Dr. Grayson, or is that right, to move with you wherever you want to move. And so I just think that's really, if we could offer that, typically when people talk about what things need to change in education, pay is usually about number 3 on the list. And the reason being typically it's like, we know what we're getting paid when we go into the job. Okay. That's not, yes, do we think educators need to be paid more? Absolutely, 100%. However, what becomes an issue is when the stress becomes really imbalanced with the pay that people, and then they start looking at the pay more like, is this really worth it? Right? But if we could offset that with like this set of this appreciation and being grateful, that's like priceless. And I'm not saying we shouldn't pay people well, but it makes it worth it.
exactly. I mean, can I just tell you, my first year of teaching, I made $27,000.
Oh, I'm with you.
I didn't even bat an eye. Of
Yeah,
course.
and it's not like it was a secret. I knew what I was getting paid. I think I started, it was like 21. And when you're a college student, I mean, this was back in the early 90s. So I wasn't making, that looked like a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And you don't think about health insurance, retirement, that also plays in. And of course, I was 21 years old when I got my first job. You don't think about those things, but those are important as well. But man, to be appreciated and to have somebody that you work with care about you is a big deal. Best retention mechanism out there. So can you share an example of gratitude's impact on a teacher or a classroom? You shared one example with the students and writing their favorite author. What about teachers?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like I have some strategies that teachers can use
Okay.
that, if you're a teacher hoping to start a gratitude practice with your classroom, the first advice that I would give you is to start small. So,
Yeah.
and is usually to be modeling an attitude of appreciation in your classroom. So when you see something good, say thank you. If a student is doing something nice for another student, name it right there in the moment. Write a little quick note to a classmate who's helping another classmate. And then if you're modeling this mindset, students are going to pick up on it, right? They're like sponges. And then from there, we can add a daily ritual of gratitude. So I always started the day with a morning meeting where we all sat, in a circle on the rug, and I had a talking stick. Usually it was like a stuffy or class mascot. We'd pass it around, right? And then I also had a closing circle every day. And it just made sense to me to have my closing circle be a gratitude circle. So every day my students would pass around our dragon, and they would name things that they were appreciative of that happened throughout the day. And for me as a teacher, it was a really good check-in to see, like, there are some things I didn't even notice. I didn't even see all
Yeah,
the
that's awesome.
that was happening. So that is an easy win, an easy thing to incorporate. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it's just a rhythm where kids get used to it. Another idea that you can try is to make it a little game. So having a kindness bingo board of some sort that's infusing gratitude is a great idea. I actually have a freebie on my Substack in February this month of a kindness bingo for students.
We
And then,
ought to put that in the chat. Maybe I can share that out later.
okay, yeah,
That would be good for me to share out even tomorrow.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll pull it up and find that. Yeah. And then my favorite activity to do in a classroom as a teacher is to have a gratitude tree. So I always start this in November, the beginning of November, and together, elementary, we make the tree together, get the butcher paper out, stick it to the wall. And then every day students can write on a leaf what they're grateful for and add it to the tree. And by the end of the month, you have this beautiful representation of gratitude And it's just really beautiful to see what students are naming when they're writing on their leaf.
That's awesome. I love that. It reminded me of, it's a little, I don't know if this was toxic positivity I was doing with my students, but I wasn't trying to, but it's kind of focusing on the positive side. We did a little song and dance in a partner. I taught kindergarten, and I was great at really creating. I'm not a very calming presence. I can be, but mostly energized, right? So my classes tend to have a lot of energy going on, but it was a pair up song, and it was about having a great day, and there was a little song and dance, and they had to dance to it and then find another partner by the count of another. And it was a great way, kind of like you mentioned, focusing on gratitude, but it was also about, today's been a great day. We didn't really name it, but really getting them in the frame of mind before they go home that, hey, things were pretty good. We had fun, and sending them out with a smile is usually appreciated by parents. Just saying.
And
So,
that's beautiful. And there's actually really interesting research that shows like when we're singing together in a community,
yeah.
in connection. So it's just like one more area.
Even adults. It's
Mhm.
one of the main reasons I love to go to concerts all the time. There's something to that. It actually has a name. It's like collective something or another. That's the name, not something or another, but it's like collective joy, where you experience this positive thing as a group and how it impacts your overall wellness. I mean, and I love music. It's always been really important to me, but just that group experience with music is
Mhm.
huge. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, are there other ways that you feel like school leaders could use gratitude to improve teacher retention and build more positive school cultures that would
Yeah,
help?
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I think that, as a school leader, you're so busy. You have so many things on your plate. And, usually, gratitude is like it's something that's not really tangible, like on our to-do list. So my first bit of advice would be to schedule it, right? Every week when you're looking at your tasks to-do list, schedule it in some way on your calendar so that it doesn't get lost and it's always on your radar. Even if it's just 30 minutes, throughout the week, where just to keep you accountable for showing appreciation and incorporating appreciation into your leadership style. And it might be that you set a 2-minute timer and you think about that one teacher that you haven't really touched base with yet. And you just write down, all the hard work that they're doing and then gift it to them, right? And I would
Yeah.
say don't let AI write your letters of appreciation. I know I'm like all for AI in a lot,
Yeah.
but write them yourself, right? And be specific. So ask your staff, in what ways do you like to be appreciated, right? And then that's huge to think about. Like I would be mortified if my principal put up a big banner with my face on it that's like teacher of the month, right? Like that's not how I'm gonna.
Appealing to you. Yeah. Well, and there's the Languages of Appreciation book by the same author that wrote the 5 love languages, except they do have an inventory you can take, because I've done some presenting on this topic, but to your point, the majority of people do not like public appreciation. And yet, what do? Typically, we have recognition programs that are all focused on public appreciation, and the majority of people don't want it. So we're literally recognizing people to show appreciation in a way they don't appreciate. And that, that blows my mind.
I'm like, why do you think that is? Like,
I don't, because it's like $1 billion business, this recognition business. We spend a lot of money on this, and truly what we need to be doing is giving principals a small budget that they can use to, and the other good news is most people don't want gifts, right? I mean, that's good news, but having little things like your favorite drink, or I don't know, if you're really into something, like coworkers and I were really into, when I worked for the university, we had a department of food science, and they had a food science rubric. Okay. So this is the university, like, and so we use that when we'd go out for lunch with cheese curds. Like we'd use the rubric on our favorite cheese curds to identify our favorite cheese curds. Okay, so one of my coworkers made me a little cheese curd. It was like a knitted little cheese curd. Now that, yeah, I guess that's crochet. Yeah, it was I still have it. It's so cute. It didn't cost a lot of money. It was just fun, right? Just something silly. That showed me she appreciated me. It was something we connected over, we thought was fun, but simple things like that go a long way. They don't have to be some, no one wants the gold watch after 15 years of service, right? Nobody cares about that. They don't do it anyway, but no one
Mhm.
cares. Now, I'm not saying teachers wouldn't want maybe an extra day off after 15 years of service or something, but showing appreciation on a more of a daily and regular basis means way more than waiting till your 5, 10, and 15-year milestones of teaching.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like when I was first started teaching, that was my goalpost. I was like, I just want to make it to year 5, and
Yeah,
not.
right. Because the statistics, right? It's like the 7-year itch where people start to go. That's what happened to me. So can you share maybe one of the most rewarding moments you've had in sharing gratitude with educators? Like, what has been one of the most significant things that has happened that you've been a part of in sort of your work in this practice?
Yeah, I think so. What comes to my mind is last fall, leading up to the election, I was feeling a lot of anxiety and I was like, oh, yeah, I should remember my gratitude practice. And I
Yeah.
created a space for other educators where we did a 21-day gratitude challenge. And so it started in early November and led up to Thanksgiving, we didn't know what the election would bring. And it was, for me, just a really meaningful space. And then for other educators, we're really appreciative of the space. So we spent for 3 weeks, each week we focused on a different gratitude practice. So the first week was all about savoring the present moment.
Yeah.
And then reflecting on the emotions and feelings that come up when we're really present and feeling good. And then week 2 was all about experiencing awe. And so we did some reflection writing, and there's some really cool research that shows like our memories are, they're not just like solid set in stone. When we like retrieve them, each time we're kind of like recrafting the memory. So if you spend time writing it out and thinking about moments in your life where you've experienced awe, that is solidifying, and that is kind of reshaping the memory to be in your long-term memory as like really a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Back to those memories is really cool. So we did that the second week. And then the third week was all about relationships and building connection. So we wrote letters to someone in our lives that we are appreciative of. And interesting research with that, you can mail the letter, you can send it, you can not send it. But they've studied if you actually in person deliver the letter and read it out loud, it boosts all the good feelings that we want.
I did this actually. Yes. So because I knew about this practice and I did this with someone who, when I was first starting my business, gave me some great business advice. Like it was a friend of a friend, somebody I did not know, but really for them to take the time to do that meant a lot. I mean, they clearly had a good relationship with their friend, right? That asking them to do this for someone they didn't know, but just that somebody would take the time to do that and provide me with some really great advice from that. I was very appreciative. And I read him the letter. He didn't know what I was going to do. I just was like, hey, can I schedule, like, I just need 30 minutes of your time. And oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like he was just really, I think, shocked would be the word, but like very grateful. So the benefit is not just for you, but the other person. And I do have to say that I think educators, we have a bit of an advantage in this regard because there are very few professions such as ours where we can connect with people that we're making such a difference that often do come back and tell us. And I've tried to do that with my past teachers as well, but I've had students of mine. I mean, I've been at this a while and I won't even tell you the age of some of my students, but some of them have become teachers themselves and will say it part because of how you taught me. And that's like that's an incredible gift, right? But that is one thing that we can say about teaching that is a huge advantage to this profession. I mean, nobody's going to get that level of appreciation back from a spreadsheet. Or if you're an accountant, yeah, you might have saved me some money on my taxes, but you're probably not going to get a handwritten note in the mail 30 years down the road, right?
Yeah.
So it's great. Anyway.
Yeah. And those are the moments, right? Like why we're in education to
That's
see.
why we're in it. Sorry, I kind of sidetracked you. So okay, what week, the letter of gratitude was week 5, what?
The third week. Yeah, the last week was the letter of gratitude.
Okay, and that's a great kind of, it takes a little more time, but what a great activity.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, and that was just a beautiful space. I had one educator who it was even early on in the challenge, she kind of we all had this chat that we were sharing our experiences with, and she wrote that she was like, everything in my life is pointing to gratitude right now, just after a week of practicing.
Yeah, that because you're paying attention to it. You know, I kind of got away from this now recently. It's funny, they call it a practice for a reason.
Mhm.
Because every single one of us, even if you've been doing this a while, you stray from your practice. So I used to write down my 5 things that I was grateful for, and I'm trying to be really specific, like things that happen, not just I'm grateful for the sun, not like that, but like really things, that had happened. And then I started just doing that. And like after I'd done it for so long, writing it, I would remember to do it every time I got in bed without even having to think about it. So part of it is establishing the habit of gratitude. And it's, in my opinion, as someone who's known about these strategies and how important they are for having the tool in your toolbox when things are not going well. So when things like pretty horrible situations where your best friend and sister is in critical condition, that's when you need that tool. But it's hard to practice the tool in that situation. And so you're trying to build up your practice when things are, in normal mode, right? So
Yeah,
you can really have it solidified for when you need it.
absolutely. Yeah. It's like going to therapy when things aren't falling apart. People are like,
Yeah,
"What therapy?" Yeah, it's like, no, you should have a gratitude practice. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
and
so, oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, you said your practice is to write 5 specific things.
Yes.
So when I first started doing gratitude, I I thought, like, I just thought, oh, I need to be writing a list. Like, and it's always at night after, reflecting on my day. That's what I need to be doing. And so, but like, I am not a gratitude journaler. Like, I had so many journals that I didn't fill up.
Yeah.
They were empty, and then I felt guilty that I wasn't doing the thing. It turns out my gratitude mindset is I'm a mindful reflector. So I experience gratitude in the moment rather than at night writing something down.
Yes.
So I had to learn that about myself. And I think for educators, it's important to kind of study this and to know what is your
Yeah.
set and which
But
practice.
I think the goal isn't that you wait until, I mean, that's an element that I think helped my practice so that it would be more universal. But that was like at a beginning phase. I really don't think that, I think that's a great way to almost start if that's your thing, right? If you're a journaler, that's a great thing. But I do think just knowing that it can be at lunch, it can be when you're in the bathroom, it can be it can be any time.
Yeah,
And it's like at the practice that you had us do or had me do with, close your eyes, look for the red things and then oh wait, eyes open, look for the red things, close your eyes, what were the blue things, right? When we start to pay attention, we don't need to necessarily have the journal.
right.
But
Yep.
when things aren't going very well, sometimes that writing of things down, it's almost like it's forcing you to look at, like, those are some hard times. Sometimes I really got to think about it.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And other times it's like, oh my gosh, look at the beautiful sunset and the beautiful rain and it's like everything is lovely. And you really, I'm saving that, writing that down when, oh my gosh, I got in a car accident and I left my lunch at home and my dog threw up on the carpet, all those days, right?
Yes, yes. And I will say it is really important if you are starting a gratitude practice and you want to try journaling, it is really important to be specific. So
Yeah.
there was research, there's actually been a lot of research on this, but they did this, Southern California did a research study with 3 groups of people. So the first group wrote a daily list of gratitude each day. The second group wrote one thing, but they expanded and wrote 5 sentences about that one thing. And then the third group they kind of compared themselves to other people who are less fortunate than themselves. They studied this, and there was one group that showed they were more energized, more positive and present, less tired, less sad, less stressed. Like, which group do you think it was? It's that middle group that were writing about one thing going in depth.
Yeah, I think that's true. There is a lot of research that shows just writing things down in general makes your brain, which is I think the only way I actually got through college and did very well was because the only way I learned to remember, like I had to figure out my study strategy, right? And for me, it was writing things down. But the funny thing is, that's actually research based. So it's just the same thing with gratitude, right? Writing it down makes it intentional, but it also has a connection to your memory. And it's something you're paying attention to. And I do think not everybody is some journaling, but even those empty journals that you have now, they'll be waiting for you. There's no guilt. They'll be waiting for you. I have lots of them.
And I actually, if others are interested in exploring their gratitude mindset, I have a fun gratitude quiz. I put together an educator's guide to gratitude. So it's a little toolkit. Is, and then it determines, are you a journaler? Are you, a mindful reflector like me? Maybe you thrive off of connection, or, maybe you're a creative gratitude person. I have a friend who she's a creative gratitude individual, and she will send me playlists of songs, and that's her.
Oh, wow. I want that friend.
It's so great. So yeah, so you can, if you head to my Substack and just input your email to subscribe, it'll automatically send you the toolkit.
And the Substack is what you put in the chat. Okay, very good. And do you send out like a weekly, monthly email? What do you do?
I'm doing kind of like bi-monthly right now, like bi-weekly, I guess. Usually, I don't know, cut this out. It's usually every month. Sometimes it's more frequent.
Just depends on what's going on. Okay, wonderful. So how can you talked about how people can find you through Substack, but will you talk a little bit about I'm going to say it wrong, Solara Learning? There we go. Will you talk to me a little bit about your business that you started?
Yeah.
Tell me more about it and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I partner with districts and schools through literacy. So I am well versed in the science of teaching reading, as you kind of spoke to that earlier.
Yeah.
I lead professional development, I offer coaching, and so that's kind of like the package you can purchase. And then also I work with schools with well-being as well. And then I also do one-on-one coaching for educators. Maybe their school isn't, deciding to work with me, but they want to work with me one-on-one. So we do that as well.
On literacy coaching or wellness or both?
So the one-on-one coaching is mostly just wellness.
Okay.
Yeah, who are looking to make a change, they're trying to get to that long-term job satisfaction. They want to stay in education, but they don't know how.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we work that. Okay, well, I'm thrilled to meet you because this is a great resource. I'm the one that comes in and asks teachers specifically what challenges they're facing and what would make them think about leaving, and helping school districts come up with some answers around that. And typically school districts ask me for like, what are my recommendations? And so I love to have resources in my connections, like people like you and other individuals I've met that are doing some amazing things regarding this work, where I think it's very interesting. Sometimes I meet with school districts and they're not quite there yet. Like they're not quite open to quite how much. And I think Amber, the webinar that she did with me on her approach as a principal, where you mentioned really working for people who really show and demonstrate appreciation, her opening my eyes on how much that improved teaching. That was phenomenal. Like her just talking about that, and it really made a difference. I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but yet maybe not. We've been focusing so much on evaluating people in other ways that we've really missed the part about, are we evaluating even our principals on the right things? Like, are they able to demonstrate appreciation? Are they showing that on a regular basis? We've focused, I think, a lot in the last 10 years, and I'm not saying that this isn't important, but principals as instructional leaders. But I think we need to rework that into principals as human leaders, like human beings first, human beings connecting to other human beings. And that's why one of the frameworks I've been kind of thinking about for leadership is a teacher-centered framework, a leadership framework, which is about, hey, if I take care of this person and I am supporting this person, I'm caring about this person, that changes everything. It changes everything, not just for the teacher, but really the student. And, I know that you were around when all we've heard our teacher, we've heard student first, student first. And I think that message has not been good.
At what cost? Yeah.
Yeah, at what cost? Because what it has done is, I know this was an unintended consequence, because of course we're all doing this because we care about students. And if we're not, I don't want to work with those people. I mean, you don't either. Nobody wants to work with people that, don't care about kids. But what has happened is it has put everyone else second. And when we reverse that, it essentially does when we put teachers first, it does make students at the center of what we do, because then teachers are able to do it in a much better way. And I don't know that we're there yet. I'd say we're probably 10% into like getting people to understand this. So thank you, Noelle, for being on board with this concept and being really passionate about it, because I think it's really important and it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's so important, and it's a ripple effect.
It is. So thank you. And thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here this evening. I'm grateful you would do this. I know that the work that you do makes a difference. So, and I can't wait to see the things that you do in the future in regard to this work, because I think it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. And thanks again for hosting and for holding space for these kinds of conversations. They're much needed. So.
Yeah, thank you.